Origin just want to reaction. This is back for Christmas. The illusion of a short war. The Great War Week 11. Yeah, this is by the channel The Great War. Yeah, they thought that this is going to be over by the Christmas, right? At the start, they had no idea what they're getting into. But yeah, in the trenches on the Western Front and in the mud on the Eastern Front, hundreds of thousands of soldiers die, and with them dies the illusion of a short war. After heavy casualties, the armies are adapting to a longer conflict and are looking for new recruits. To convince them to fight, they are taking advantage of national minorities and their hope of equal rights and self-determination. Yeah, I mean, when they rolled out so many soldiers, like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of soldiers for this, then they realized, like, okay, this is not just like any time war. First of all, the equipments are different, the field is different. People are fighting in all sides, right? This is not going to be a short war. But yeah, by this time, after so many deaths, so many, battles in different terrains, water, land, air, right? In basically Russia, in basically France, everywhere, they just realize, oh shit, this is way bigger. So yeah, let's watch this one.
The war of rapid victories was over, and the continuous war in the filthy trenches had begun, ending the rush of optimism with which the warring nations had begun the war, and bringing in a heavy mood of disillusionment that would crush the spirits of the millions of men fighting and dying. I'm Indy.
Yeah, crush the spirits. I mean, imagine the morale, right? I mean, you get the news like, oh shit, everybody's preparing for long-term war because this feels like it's going to be. Because so far, people just thought they were basically clocking the time, basically. Like, oh, Christmas is going to come. By then, apparently, there's going to be truce or anything, right? War will stop. They're just, hoping for that. Oh shit, it's going to be a longer one. I don't know what that does to your morale after spending tons and tons of time into the trenches in the mud.
Idel, welcome to the Great War. Last week we saw the Germans laying siege to Antwerp, the last bastion of Belgian resistance, while in the east, the Russians were laying siege to the Austrians at Przemysl, the Austrian army now behind Russian lines. Another Russian army was on an endless march through Poland, but at the Aisne, in France. Both sides were stuck in the mud, losing thousands of men every day as the endless battle continued. And in Africa, the Germans were tying down the South African troops, preventing them from joining the fight in Europe. On the Western Front, Kaiser Wilhelm himself had visited his German troops at Chamonix, telling them that they would indeed be home by Christmas. And in Paris, after the Battle of the Marne a few weeks ago, there had been matching hopes for a French victory. However, in the French army, Commander-in-Chief Joseph Joffre abandoned his hopes of outflanking the Germans and winning a spectacular victory. He saw that his best hope now was just holding the line, preventing the Germans from achieving their own encircling maneuvers. But the Germans, under Prince Ruprecht, were coming on strong this week. Now, Ruprecht was the Crown Prince of Bavaria, the last one actually, and though he got his appointment as commander of the German 6th Army because of his title, he proved to be one of the best commanders in the entire German army, remaining on the Western Front for the entire war and eventually reaching the rank of Field Marshal. He nearly managed to surround the French at Lille and Arras on October 4th. General Ferdinand Foch was in charge of dealing with this threat. Foch's main contribution turned out to be one of morale, his iron determination, and his absolute insistence that there be no retreat. Soldiers must hold or die, which they did, and a major German push on Arras was knocked back. By the evening of the 6th, the French line was stable. The Germans then turned their full attention to the siege of Antwerp, Belgium, where they had been shelling the surrounding forts since September 26th. Now, 8,000 British troops were sent to Antwerp on October 4th and 5th, which sounds great, but many of these troops were raw recruits and had never even held, let alone fired, a rifle. These men were merely a stopgap measure, though. For a further 22,000 British troops, a full professional division was now on its way. Once they got there, the Belgians, with 30,000 British troops to defend them, thought victory had suddenly arrived, and the Germans were slowly pushed back. This was only an illusion, though, for the French government suddenly decided not to send any French troops, as they had promised, and this lack of support caused the British to hold back. This was probably a good thing, as the British and Belgians had no realistic hope of defeating the Germans at Antwerp without French help. On October 7th, the German army began pounding the city of...
Wait a minute, why didn't France send soldiers that they promised? I guess because, they were They were threatened at their homeland a bit too much at Paris, so they were, I guess, running thin in manpower. Damn, that is something, right? 30,000 British there, so at least Belgium has some kind of hope there, because so far Belgium is getting just pounded by Germany. I mean, obviously Belgium is not, big superpower compared to the Germany, Britain, France. So, basically Belgium got sandwiched between all this. So when the British actually came for, help with that mass of number, they felt like, oh, finally something's gonna happen for us.
Of Antwerp itself, not just the surrounding forts, with 17-inch howitzers. The defenders, quite literally, had no means of counterattack. Their guns just couldn't reach, and the British would not move forward without the missing French support. On October 8th, the British began to evacuate. And on October 10th, the tired and battered Belgians could take no more, and King Albert, who personally commanded the Belgian army, was forced to flee the city. The long siege of Antwerp had dashed British and Belgian hopes of breaking out and claiming victory. Disillusioned, they now only resolved to hold back the Germans long enough to move troops from their posts northeast of Paris to the Channel ports and prevent the Germans from reaching the sea, which they did. In the east, in Poland, disillusionment was spreading as well on both sides, as the technically superior German forces faced the enormous mass of the Russian army, now on the move in a seemingly endless, spirit-crushing march to positions along the Vistula River. On this day, October 9th, 1914...
One thing's for damn sure, whether it's World War I or World War II, or any other war for that matter, Russians, when they attack, that number is basically staggering, right? It's way too many.
The German army captured the Russian order of battle from a Russian officer, and they realized they had 18 divisions against what was now 60 Russian divisions in two armies in Poland, and even superior arms were not going to give Germany a decisive victory. So the new German battle plan for the moment was just to follow up the Russian columns. Really, that was it. Nobody wants to attack somebody that's more than 3 times as strong as them. You really have to pick your battles. And picking his battles is just what German General von Hindenburg did, winning a series of carefully chosen small victories during these weeks, harassing the Russians throughout Poland, and very importantly, keeping the Russian army too busy to help out with what was going on further south in Galicia, where the Russians were still laying siege to the Austrian army at the fortress of Przemysl. When the siege had begun 2 weeks ago, the Russians had been unable to bring in their heavy artillery because of the mud surrounding the fortress. But they had made a full-scale assault anyway, hoping to win before the Austrians could bring in reinforcements. It was futile and merely resulted in 40,000 Russian casualties. Now, the lands that these armies, whether Austrian, German, or Russian,
Fucking hell, those real images of real events that happened in World War I, where you just see piles of body like that, holy shit, that's just heavy.
Were now fighting in were mostly inhabited by minority peoples of the empires, who were often unsatisfied with their status within their country. What we see throughout the rest of the war is warring nations making promises and hints to disaffected or dependent peoples to try to win them over in order to gain an advantage. The Russian provinces of Poland, which had been annexed in the 1700s, were being overrun by the German army under Hindenburg and Ludendorff, and many Poles in that region were beginning to ask the question, would the Germans grant Poland autonomy? Polish soldiers were also fighting alongside the Austrians.
That's one thing you don't hear quite often. Poland. Is Germany friend of Poland? Yeah, I think in few decades you realize it's really not.
Hoping that an Austro-Hungarian victory would re-establish an independent Poland. The empire encouraged this belief, and the Polish Legion, which became an independent part of the Imperial Army, was formed by Joseph Pilsudski in late August. Pilsudski, later Marshal Pilsudski, would go on after the war to be the leader of an independent Poland in the 20s and 30s. Being a minority in 1914, much like today in many places, most often involved a history of being hated and violently repressed for who you were, being invaded repeatedly over the years, or being murdered for your beliefs, and at best, only having a token say in the control of your lives and lands. But with the Autumn War came a change, as the reality of a...
Yeah, one thing's for damn sure, right? Around this time, at least whenever some kind of atrocity is about to happen or is happening, right? I mean, entire world knows about it, and entire world at least do something as a, basically recognition that this is happening, right? Bringing things to light, basically social media helps for that too. But years ago, during this time or even before that, minorities and groups of minorities in some countries, genocides happen, famine happens that nobody helps around because somebody suppressed something here and there. Shit like this happens, and obviously world, so lots of time don't even hear about it until very later on we realize that, oh, this happened, right? I mean, at least around this time, people know that there is certain country in Africa who's going through certain bad times. So there's a political pressure, a national pressure. So in the end, basically government there has to pay attention even if they don't want to, right? Even if they're trying to suppress the minority now because of the world stage pressure, they have to basically help around, right? So this time, there are lots of fucked up things is happening around this time, but it's definitely better compared to the past ones. Because large-scale atrocity doesn't just go unnoticed by the world, which happened in the past a lot.
Seemingly endless wars sank in among the powers, a reality that led them to grasp for any advantage and to search for new allies in perhaps unlikely places. The promise of independence, or even just citizenship in exchange for your allegiance, is a powerful one, and one that is still relevant today. Many of the minority peoples asked to fight in 1914 had never before even had a glimmer of hope of independence, and so they fought, based on the promises of a brighter future for their people. Unfortunately, most of those promises turned out to be empty, hollow words, and millions more men would die for lies. So the Russians now encouraged all those...
Yeah, that is so true, right? Around this time, people made lots of promises about things, but nobody actually wanted to deliver. They just wanted to do any shit to get advantage, I guess. Everything's fair in war, apparently. That's what their mentality was. World War I was just about egos of empire. That's what it was. World War II was about ideologies, and one evil ideology and one evil empire. But World War I had different empires with different kind of egos that obviously they lied and, basically did any shit necessary to win.
Poles in the Russian domains not crawling with Germans and Austrians to fight with the Russians, also supposedly to further their nationalistic ambitions. Poles were now fighting against Poles. Nearly 2 million Poles fought in the war on both sides, with some 450,000 of them dying, mostly fighting to gain their independence. Britain was even trying to enlist the Sheikh of Mecca with the promise of future Arab control of chunks of the Ottoman Empire, but you also see minorities encouraged in various other ways. Jews in Russia, for example, were now allowed to rise to the ranks of officers in the army to encourage them to join up and fight, although they still did not receive full citizenship and, let's face it, were often murdered by Russian townspeople who needed a scapegoat for Russian military failures. And there certainly had been their share of it.
How fucked up that is, man. Entire townspeople kills Jews because, of course, everybody failed because of Jews. One thing I'm noticing a trend of all the, basically group of people that have been screwed throughout the year. One thing is consistent. Jews has been screwed a lot since the Romans' time. Right? If you watch any Romans like Dovetti's video reacted to that series, Jews get screwed in that. Any other Roman series as Jews get screwed in that. Any other history about, wars and, basically crusades or anything. There's lots of instances. Even there are not wars, but certain incident happen. People blame Jews for something. Right? Even Mel Gibson is blaming Jews today. So, Jews always get, basically screwed every time.
Them, especially the colossal ones at Tannenberg and Masurian Lakes weeks ago. Actually, 4 of the 5 major warring nations had now seen their share of both victory and defeat. But the 5th, the Empire of Austria-Hungary, had seen nothing but military failures riddled with incompetence. And there the Austrians were, at the end of the week, still under siege in Przemysl, with the Russians pressing them. The northern Russian armies were still on their endless march to their positions along the Vistula in Poland. And as for the Germans, after clever maneuvering, at the end of the week, Hindenburg was only 19 kilometers from Krakow. In the west, the last major Belgian town had fallen, and the 80,000 men remaining in the Belgian field army had retreated. But the siege had given British and French troops time to move their positions, and the final possibility for the Germans to outflank them was disappearing. The war was going to be long and bloody, and all sides now knew it. There would be no encirclement in the west, no Russian colossus triumphant in the east, no glory for the empire in the southeast. There would only be continuous battles in the muddy trenches with thousands of new recruits dying each day, or endless freezing marches with soldiers dying by the roadsides in the mud and snow. This was modern war. See you next week. If you're just joining us, here's a good episode.
Okay, first of all right, how did this channel survive YouTube? With all those real images of real people dead, right? I mean, YouTube is very twitchy with things like that. I uploaded, one of the USA versus USSR meme video, which is, I guess, most famous video from my channel. Even that got flagged pretty soon, like this is age restricted, this and that. Because I guess there is some form of firing here and there. There is nothing there that could be a problem. It's just weapons firing, and it's a meme video, right? People are firing weapons are firing at people, but nobody's getting hurt or anything like that in the video, at least. After video, I don't know what happened, but in the video nothing like that is happening. But still, even that is too much for YouTube. Well, in this, there are literal dead bodies. He's showing the real photos, real images of that, and YouTube didn't panic. I guess YouTube probably did panic when he uploaded, but then he fought, I guess, right? Like, this is history, you can do this and that, and then maybe YouTube just let it go. Because I can't, there's no way in hell YouTube didn't panic with this one. Yeah, I mean, back with Christmas time, we know that everybody had this illusion that it will finish until Christmas. That's what the thing that was basically pushing everybody. Nobody wanted this war because there is no one evil. It's just war, right? This country is fighting, so we have to defend this country, and it's just always that. In the end, people just know that this is just war of ego, of empires. Basically, there is no one evil, so nobody really wants to fight, but everybody has to fight for their country in the end, right? They want to fight for their country, but in the end, what's the goal? Everybody has that feeling. What's the goal, right? We are just fighting. So everybody just wanted this shit to be over, so everybody just looked at Christmas thinking this is going to be over. But then they slowly realized that Christmas, okay, it's not going to be here. So I don't know what people morale are like. Holy shit, are we going to stuck here forever? Are we going to die here with the trenches in the mud and bombardment? So we know in the Christmas time that there was this temporary truce because people were fed up. All the soldiers were fed up. Like, fuck this shit. Some guy in basically some castle type place, just some leader of country wants us to fight. We're supposed to fight. Fuck them. We're gonna call it truce. So German, French, British, everybody just call it truce. Walked in no man's land, played soccer and whatever, football, and just chilled out, I guess. That just show you, like, okay, if enemies can basically walk in no man's land and chill and just play a game, what's the point of this war? Because certain people said so. World War II is completely understandable. Hitler, fucked up ideology is completely... World War II is understandable. World War I is just, it's just battle of egos, I guess. Right, well, that was Back for Christmas, The Illusion of Short War, The Great War, Week 11. If you like my reaction, don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out the Bricks Hunter, there's a link in the description. Check out the cast for place, link cards, and I'll see you next time.